Good morning. So my talk today will be about upskilling for the AI age, essential skills for the modern accounting technician. My name is Dominic Ligot, and I'm the president of Global Elite Institute of Technology. We upskill people in AI and cybersecurity. At the same time, I founded companies like Zerolytics, which is a social impact AI company, and Ethics PH, which is a an advocacy watchdog looking at the ethical and responsible use of AI. I currently serve as part of the board of trustees of the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, and I'm still an active faculty at the University of Asia and the Pacific, where I co-authored their master's degree in applied business analytics. More recently, I was the Philippine representative to the International Expert Panel on Advanced AI Safety. I was appointed by the DICT in this role, completely pro bono position, so that the Philippines could have a voice in the development of artificial intelligence. So before I get into the weeds of AI and accounting, I thought to start this talk with a question. No? How many of you would consider photography and art? I think for the most part, most of you probably will say yes now. But in case any of you said no, you would not be wrong. Because when photography first emerged in the 19th century, it was not considered art, surprisingly. No? It was considered documentation. So you see these photos of Jose Rizal and the Katipuneros. Those were not considered artistic. They were just photos, no? Like we would consider photocopies as documentation. In fact, artists rejected photography. It was considered an industrial imitation of art because back in that era, the popular art, which is also a business, was portraiture. People were busy making, paintings of important people, and it was a big business. And then when photography emerged, that business was threatened. Portraiture artists felt that people would stop patronizing their shop because something that used to take days, even months to complete can now be done in a photography studio for, in a couple of minutes to a couple of hours. And it wouldn't be until the early 20th century, literally 100 years, when photography started to become considered as an art. So here are some of the early pioneers of that era. You have Alfred Stieglitz, who pioneered creative photography, Ansel Adams, landscape photography, Dorothea Lang, photo portraits. And then now there's pretty much very little debate. We consider photography as an art. But as I was doing my research on this, I'm not an art major by any means, no. But when I was doing my research on technology trends, I saw this story of photography and art. And if you look at the history and realize what happened, it's something you can't unsee once you realize it. So if you look at all of the art before photography, basically up to the 19th century, they were realistic or tried to be realistic, The work of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel, it's like they were painting photographs before photographs existed. While 100 years after photography emerged, when it was started to become accepted as an art itself changed. It became less realistic. You had impressionism, surrealism, abstract art. Nowadays you have splotches on the wall. That's art, or bananas taped on the wall as an art. And it's interesting how the new art movements strayed away from realism. So from the likes of Rembrandt, I've seen a Rembrandt myself when I was in Europe years ago. It was behind the bulletproof glass, his works. Rembrandts are prized for their realism, especially when it comes to light and shadow. That was really Rembrandt's skill. This is a self-portrait of Rembrandt. And then after that, here's a self-portrait of Pablo Picasso, where you have a lot of, distorted faces, or Salvador Dali with the melted clocks. So it's fascinating. No? It's as if when photography emerged, artists hated it because it was stealing their work or stealing their profession, which is primarily realism. And then after 100 years, they decided We're never going to be as realistic as a photograph. Let's just give that to the photographers and let's do something else. No? I want to end this anecdote on photography on a discussion on Photoshop, no, which emerged in the 90s. When Photoshop first emerged, photographers also hated it, ironically, because it made what they used to do quite manually with, shutter speed, aperture, developing, film, doable in a few clicks. Photoshop could alter images, increase, you can retouch images, increase the contrast, increase the brightness. Something that you would have done in a developing studio can now be done in a click. At the same time, they were worried about false or misleading images because you can use Photoshop to alter the images, especially now. But then when photography moved from analog to digital, Photoshop became the de facto developing studio. It's now the essential tool in most artists and photographers' toolkits. No? So, why did I start this discussion with art and photography? Well, in a similar way, it's nice to look at what happened here. We're now seeing a similar disruption in accounting through artificial intelligence. Same things applied, you have a profession that's been around for a long time and we used to use, calculators, even spreadsheets, but by and large the profession has been largely manual and human driven. And now you have the emergence of AI tools that could potentially disrupt how we do things. So I'm here to talk about that. No? I'll divide my talk into 5 parts. I'll talk about the disruption happening now because of AI. Then I'll quickly bring you through kind of how it works intuitively. It's useful to know, even if you're not an AI engineer or a developer, exactly what is the premise behind this technology. And then tackle some myths. And then talk about prompt engineering, which for me is the essential skill that everyone should learn, especially accountants. And then let's talk about some use cases and the impact of AI on accounting as a profession. So in June 2024, the venture capitalist firm Andreessen Horowitz put out this article called Death Taxes in AI, How Gen AI Will Change Accounting. And basically, it's a summary of how the Gen AI capabilities, which I'll show you in a minute, is now challenging traditional accounting processes, tasks, and workflows. And they were not alone. You have other companies, firms. Thomson Reuters put out an article about accounting jobs, and the reason is quite straightforward. Gen AI is fundamentally transforming the accounting profession, introducing efficiencies, new capabilities, and strategic advantages that are reshaping traditional workflows and roles. The biggest benefit of all of this stuff is productivity. So you want to do more with the same time or less time. And then secondarily, creativity as well. There is a lot of creativity that's involved, even in accounting, where you have to translate numbers into reports. AI can help with that. And knowledge management also. If you're able to store your knowledge, which is anything from basic accounting to company data, and allow AI to access that, there are opportunities to, bring the AI practice into the accounting practice if we are serious. No? So first, let's talk about Gen AI. What is it and how does it work? I was actually one of the first to use Gen AI in the Philippines because I was a beta tester. I tested GPT-2 and GPT-3 shortly after in August 2022. And when I was using it didn't really impress me as such because it just felt like what we call autocomplete. You put up some words and it finishes it for you, similar to what happens in Google. So it wasn't until later, Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist of OpenAI, saw an interview of his, and he said, in perfecting next word prediction, so this is what it was, next word prediction, we stumbled upon something far more powerful. So even they were surprised. No? And I think it's best explained through an example. No? So, of course, I'm testing ChatGPT. This is one of my first conversations with GPT-3. No? Here's a process. Get cup, add milk power. I misspelled powder accidentally. Add sugar, add coffee power, add ice, drink coffee. What's missing in this process? And this is also an example of a good prompt, which I'll explain later. Um, and of course, we know the answer, no? How can you drink something without water, di ba? But I was also surprised that, the AI knew the answer in a way because it said, okay, you forgot to boil the water. You forgot to brew the coffee. You forgot to stir it. You forgot to strain it. You forgot to add flavor if ever. So this should be your process, no? Binigyan pa ako ng, pinagalitan pa ako. Sabi niya, get cup, boil water, add coffee powder. So it knew that I meant powder instead of power. Brew coffee, add sugar, add milk powder, stir well, strain coffee, add ice, add flavor, drink coffee. And frankly, I mean, nowadays this is normal, no? But back then I was very impressed, surprised actually. We've never seen a tool like this. Something that understands what drinking means and what coffee is. This is unprecedented, right? And we were conditioned to think of these parang bots as just predicting words. But in so doing, it's actually modeling us. It understands us. It understands our jobs. It understands our professions as reflected in language. And accounting is just another subset of language, another language that we understand. No? So this is a radical change from how we understood AI because up until the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022, when you said AI, they would be referring to this thing called discriminative AI, the traditional AI, right? You get data, find patterns, and then you predict something. No? So it interprets data basically. So you give it a picture of a cat, it'll tell you, yes, it's a cat, 99%. Or a picture of a person pretending to be a cat, it'll say nope, that's not a cat. Assuming you trained it enough. Generative AI actually uses the same process, but instead of giving an insight or a prediction, it generates more data. So you give it a picture of a cat, it can generate more cats, or you prompt it with the word cat, it can come up with cats. You ask it questions, comes up with answers. You give it some words, it creates a sentence. Generative siya, so generates data. And this is interesting because I would compare them to the left and the right brain. So if you're a left brain, you're quantitative, you're logical. That's discriminative AI. But if you're right brain, you're more expressive, artistic. That's Gen AI. So you might think, okay, what about accounting? Accounting is quite a left brained activity for the most part. Well, the first thing is it's not just left brain. You also need creativity in accounting. But at the same time, the idea here is you can use both AIs together. No? You might have more traditional discriminative AI that you use for forecasting, for example, or regression. You can still do that. But then to interpret the results or to discuss the results, Gen AI can come in and get the results of that and turn it into a report. And these are things that will probably be useful, not just to accountants, but anyone preparing reports out of data. So let's discuss briefly first exactly how does this work, and one concept to understand that will help explain a lot is called embeddings. So when OpenAI and all these other AI companies started training these bots, they ingested lots and lots of text because they needed raw data to train these models. In the old traditional way, we called it natural language processing. You literally had to label each word. Like this is a noun, this is a verb, this is an adjective, etc. This is positive, this is negative, this is neutral. And it's through those labels that AI is able to kind of get patterns and predict it. And honestly, it wasn't really very good. We never had a decent AI that could write like us until these chatbots, ChatGPT emerged. And the reason for that is these models, the newer ones, were trained differently. We didn't have to label each word. Instead, each sentence or phrase or paragraph was ingested as a sequence of words or a sequence of tokens. So you have a phrase, we go to work by train. Each word is a token. And what AI will do through machine learning is look for, let's say, the word work across multiple examples, multiple places, and understand which are the typical words that happen before work and which are the typical words that happen after work. And then you have a sense now of the position of the word work in any sentence. And there's literally billions of sentences. It's mind-boggling. But the idea there is once you do that, you now have words that commonly occur with the word work. And that gives you context of what work means in that particular sentence. Each of those likely positions and combinations are now stored in what we call an embedding. So an embedding is like in a map you have two numbers, right? Like latitude and longitude. And if you know those two numbers, you know your position on the earth, right? So the same thing works for embeddings, which is not just two numbers, it's at least 150 to 300 numbers last I checked. But through these numbers, you now have a sense of where work appears in a sentence, the context. Imagine those numbers now store context. Because once you have kind of embedded every word in existence, you can now compare words with each other. For example, the word sea and the word ocean are similar. They have the same embeddings. Or the word football and soccer similar because they probably appear in the same place in many sentences. No, the word I, the word we, to the point that you can now start grouping words together. And this is really what's happening in the training process. You now have walk, run, and swim, similar meanings. They're all activities or actions. On, in, and with, similar. They're all prepositions. Bus, train, and car, similar. They're all vehicles. So without having to explicitly label each word, AI was able to group them already. And it's not just noun, verb, adjective. It's any context. It's vehicles, it's prepositions, it's activities. And that's actually the part of the secret sauce of why we need to learn prompting. Because each word will now have associated words. And by combining all of these word associations, AI is now able to, in a way, think. Not like us, but think for itself in understanding the meaning. So this is, for example, a visualization of the word manufacturing in the AI embedding sense, no? So this is like a view of the brain of the AI, and the word manufacturing will have other words that often come along with it, and that gives the AI a sense of meaning. Okay, so before we look into how to utilize this, let's first understand some of the pushback now. Because not everyone is sold on to AI or adopts it. I'm sure amongst the accounting community, the adoption is still relatively low because we think I don't deal with language naman, I deal with numbers. No? So some of the most common objections. One, you need to be an IT or programmer to use AI. You need to be a mathematician. Number two, or a statistician for AI. Actually, accountants are mathematicians. But notice most of accounting doesn't think that the math they know is at par with what you need to do AI for. You need a server laptop or a gaming laptop or data center or cloud to use AI because the compute is quite high. It's very intensive. Number four, you need clean curated data, a data warehouse before AI. I mean, garbage in, garbage out. What will AI use? AI is not reliable. It hallucinates. It gives you false information. So you can't use it for business. And lastly, prompt engineering was only useful for a brief moment. After that, you don't need it anymore because you can just talk to AI naturally. So all of these are myths because they're not true. Basically, as I speak to you today, first, anyone can use Gen AI. You don't even need to use English as long as you can write a sentence. Tagalog, Cebuano, Spanish, Becky, Konyo, speak, etc. No? Basta language, you can use AI. Second, AI was built with math, but it's actually best used for qualitative stuff, humanities, even art, reports, text. If you can access this call, you can access AI because all of the AI tools are internet driven. You don't need your own cloud. You can just log in, use it immediately. Even if you don't have data, you can use AI because in the term GPT, generative pre-trained transformer, the word P means pre-trained. That means there's already data in AI. And you can even use AI to clean data or generate new data out of an existing repository. Yes, hallucinations are a thing. They're not a bug. They're actually a feature. The real reason for hallucinations is bad prompting. So if you prompt the AI the wrong way, don't be surprised you get a bad answer. And that actually makes prompt engineering not a fad. It's the key skill. Everything being done in AI right now is essentially prompting. So I feel that should give us some moment to reflect, no, about the new skills that we need to add. certainly the old traditional accounting skill set is still important, but now you need to complement that with digital skills like prompting. So if coffee was my first aha moment, this was the second. So I was writing this another, test prompt from this text, which is the Quick Brown Fox poem. Please count each word, return it in the result of word and count, and it did that. And then, I said, can you rewrite this prompt into JavaScript, which is a programming language here on the left? And I tested it and it worked. So now you have code and just a prompt, and they produce the exact same output. And that for me, I feel is the underestimated value of these tools. For the longest time in many companies, there's really literally a cultural divide between technical people and non-technical people, or IT people and everyone else. And part of it is because of this. Business people speak business language, IT speaks in programming. And now we have a tool which can bridge both worlds. If you're a programmer, you can use AI to improve your code, comment your code. If you're a non-programmer, you can use AI to create code. So I think this needs more attention. How much of our day-to-day work in our departments could have used programming, but now doesn't need to because you have prompting or you can do it better. Okay, so let's talk about prompting na. Now, prompt engineering, the term engineering is a little misleading, but I think it's closer to etiquette. How do you talk to AI so that you get the best results? This is a typical structure of a well-crafted prompt, but it looks deceptively simple. But most of us probably just use the part in blue. We like treating AI the way we treat Google. And I'm telling you, that's the least powerful way to use these tools. No? Don't hesitate to add the context, give a background. Don't hesitate to ask direct questions. Don't hesitate to give examples or output formats. And you can see the output of your prompting will be better than average. These prompting works on any chatbot. By this time, there's more than one. You have ChatGPT. We used to call it Bard. Now it's Gemini, Perplexity, etc. I won't go into each one. But suffice it to say, if you know prompting, you can use any of these tools better. Okay, so what are the structures? I mentioned earlier the part in blue, that's zero shot. Zero shot means no examples. The better way, which I was suggesting, is few shot. Give some examples, give context, and you'll see the output improve dramatically. The best way is called chaining, where you have a conversation with the bot, and rather than jump directly to the question, you give some preliminary prompting. For example, you say, what is AI? That's just zero shot. It'll probably get it right because that's such a generic question, common question. Few shot is, here's an article, summarize it in 5 bullets and give it to me in a table. That will always work. No hallucinations. It's because you made AI focus on a specific set of data rather than guessing. Hallucinations is basically just guessing. And if your prompts are not defined enough for AI to guess properly, you'll get a hallucination. In this case, you were very terse, very explicit. You'll get what you want. A chain works like this. Let's say you want to do a SWOT analysis. And rather than jumping immediately to the punchline, you can ask, what do you mean by SWOT analysis? Or can you give me the elements of a SWOT analysis? And it will do that. You can even correct it if it was wrong. You can say, no, T is not tactics, it's threats. Can you rerun the definition? And it will apologize. How about this? Does this make sense? Or you can go define strengths, define weakness, define opportunities, define threats. So let's say you've already had a multiple conversation, and this is better than what most people do. Most people will end with one question, one answer, done. You close the session. But in a chain, the more back and forth you do, the better. Because by the time you're ready to say, okay, given what we've discussed, here's the context, give me a SWOT analysis. It's already read everything you've done earlier, and that becomes part of the context for this final prompt. And I guarantee you the output will always be good if you do it that way. So some examples. Here was a story last year about the Amazon employees walking out over climate change promises. I was too lazy to read this. So I copied the entire text, pasted it into the chatbot, and it said, from the above text, please provide a summary of the following: plot, tone, theme, setting, conflict, characters, and point of view. And this is AI. I'm instructing AI to use these headings. These are the 7 elements of story, rather than ask for a generic summary. And that's what I got. So what's the plot? Employees are staging protests. What's the tone? Critical and frustrated. What's the theme? Employee discontent, corporate social responsibility. The setting is the offices. The conflict is climate change promises, etc. So this was great. Rather than just getting a generic 5 point summary, the summaries are now written according to the headings. And for me, that's a superior way of prompting. Rather than get generic stuff, get specific stuff. You can see how this can be very valuable during, for research, etc. I remember giving this talk in a hotel, and the planning was rather bad because a fire drill occurred during my talk. They didn't require us to leave the building, but we had to wait for the fire drill to finish because every time I was going to open my mouth, a voice would go code blue, code orange. So it was a rehearsal of these codes. No? I didn't know what they meant. So I spent the break, the unintended break, asking perplexity. What are code blue and code orange? List them and their definitions. And I got sources agad. So what are they? No? So I found out that these are, codes for emergencies. No? Code blue means life-threatening emergency, usually an adult. If it's a white code white, it's a baby. Code red is a fire. Code purple means an abduction. Tindi, no? Code gray means an aggressive person is in the hospital. Silver is like Trump, there's a shooter. Orange is medical decontamination. And green means many people died, no? So I said, wow, these are surprisingly morbid situations for such cheerful colors. And if you read the sources, that's intentional. So these are codes normally used in medical facilities, and the goal is to alert the staff of a problem without alarming the patients. I didn't know that. Now I do, and I even have the references to prove it. So the aha moment here is I don't think we've ever been in a situation in history where literally any knowledge available publicly is accessible via a prompt. And if you think about it, accounting is the type of practice where you're looking at both internal and external knowledge and bringing it together. No? And that's the example I wanted to show you for that. No? So there's a pattern called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which is essentially combining what the chatbot knows and internal information or information you provide it. And the RAG process is quite straightforward. If you ask a query, before the query is passed on to the chatbot, a retriever will get the relevant data, not all of the data, just the relevant data, and add it to the prompt. And then the LLM will answer. No? So, kunyari, you say, give us a summary of our expenses for the last 6 months. Highlight which costs have increased by more than 20%. And then give us strategies to manage these costs. No? So, those are three different queries in one. No? Before the chatbot probably knows the answer to the last question because it's read every finance and accounting textbook available publicly. So it'll have some opinions. What it doesn't know is the costs, the cost for the past 6 months. And that's what the retriever will get. Get these costs like a database, no? Add it to the chatbot, including whatever it knows about accountancy, and then it'll give you a very good outcome. No? These days, you don't even need fancy software for this. You can do it natively in AI. You can literally upload a spreadsheet. So here's an example. I have a simple spreadsheet, 2 columns, watch name and price. So these are high-end watches, obviously. There's no parsing of the brand or the type of watch. It's just all in one free-form text field. And I uploaded that, and I said, tell me more about this spreadsheet. And the ChatGPT said, it contains data on a collection of watches. Here's what the first few rows look like. You have column for watch, column for price, some examples. So it's like you're interrogating the data na. I said, okay, can you group the totals by watch brand? Kasi there's a brand. So you can see here, the chatbot was able to extract the brand name from the free form text and then add up the data. That's amazing, no? Hard to do manually. Certainly hard to do in a database, but here's the AI doing it. Except it made a mistake. No? So I spotted it immediately. I said, there's no Caliber brand. That's actually a Cartier watch. And I told the chatbot, the caliber, the Cartier should be under Cartier, and it corrected the total. No? Used to be 2.5 and 400, now it's 2.9. So this ability to just on the fly do, data exploration, analysis, I think can be useful to a lot of people doing analytical work, which includes accounting. No? So I said, okay, can you reproduce the table and add the brand as a column? And it did that, even added the price, the total price per brand. And I said, okay, given this, extract the entries that are from 100,000 to less than 500,000 in terms of price. And I got it. So it's essentially doing what databases do or a VLOOKUP or, pivot table, but doing it naturally. And that's what I mean. How much can this positively impact your work? I think that for me, the quintessential question. Okay, so use cases. Ever since 2023, researchers have been gathering basically the common uses of the tools, no? And I think these six are still relevant. Creating a technical assistant for any task. Parang kanina, I had an assistant parsing watches for me. Content creation, writing reports, for example, or editing them. Personal support, where you get more high level general advice or therapy. I know people who are already using AI as kind of a secret counselor, for whatever they do. Learning and education, people will now learn using AI instead of Google. Creativity, of course, and of course, research and decision making and analysis. I think these are six areas which can immediately impact any job, accounting especially. Now we're another buzzword is called agentic AI. Agentic is basically treating the model not just as a chatbot, but as a fully autonomous unit of work. And this is what's spooking out a lot of people, thinking that we're going to lose our jobs. So what distinguishes an AA agent from traditional Gen AI is these three things. Number one, it can use more data. It can use text, audio, voice, video, cognition. If you can prompt in steps, it can certainly prompt itself. So if you give a high level complex assignment, it will break it down using its own internal chain of thought mechanism. And finally, action. If you connect an AI brain or give it permission to use your computer, it can now interact with other systems. And this is an opportunity for, I think, all of us to review our workflows. Now, how do we currently do work today, and where does agentic AI fit in? Everything from self-driving cars to healthcare, automated finance, automated customer service. No? Specifically for accounting, I think there's huge benefits, no? Automation of repetitive tasks, certainly. We can now process documents faster, extract data faster from unstructured text, no? Real-time analysis and decision support, the outcomes are split second. Imagine if we can connect that to, internal systems. In fact, some companies are doing that. They're deploying localized AI models. Of course, can it make your reporting more advanced and forecasting more advanced? Can you create conversational finance, basically talking to the data, like I was talking earlier? And how will that affect management rather than having to wait for finance? Finance just enabled everyone by giving them a bot, something like that. And finally, enhanced reporting and customization. So there are many roles emerging in AI, and these are just a few of them. I think accountants should also start framing themselves in terms of these four archetypes. No? Are you a builder, meaning you're developing solutions using technology for a constituency? Then you're a builder. You know, Traditional software engineers and data analysts and data scientists will fall here too. But accountants build dashboards, right? So you are builders at a certain way. Or you might be just a user, which is not trivial at all. You're leveraging AI to do business plans, you're doing AI to do your paperwork. You need prompt engineering to help with that. Or you might be a planner. You're more of an executive and you run teams. You want to know where AI fits into your process. Those are also very valid concerns. And finally, how do we build a workforce if we don't have someone to train people? So we need trainers as well. And this can be a viable, career augmentation for many of us. You might know accounting, But do you know AI accounting? That's how it's going to work. Okay, so let's finally talk about the impact. What does this all mean for us now? And let's look at examples of what happened in other industries. As early as 2023, a call center in the Philippines implemented ChatGPT to its customer support representatives, resulting in a 14% improvement, 1-4, in productivity. It also improved job performance, customer satisfaction, and reduced turnover, at least at that time, no, amongst the agents. So productivity is really the biggest opportunity for many companies. And it will also reshape the way we treat labor because obviously part of the productivity may come at the expense of jobs. But at the same time, there are new jobs that are getting created, as I mentioned. So in this example, they looked at the data closer and they found that it was the less skilled workers who got more than 40% improvement. And the top of the batch, the top performers were getting minimal. So in a way, the story here is leveling the playing field. Everyone is now operating at a bare minimum average level, which is massive now, considering we have a lot of in every company there's always these laggards or unproductive people. Now you have a way of seeing, okay, why don't you use AI to improve your productivity? BCG did a similar study, gave some of their consultants GPT-4. Of course, they outperformed those who did not, but it was the below average consultants, performing consultants, that benefited the most. Some of them with a 43% improvement in their performance. So these gains are amazing, too hard to ignore. Lastly, in a school, the University of Minnesota implemented AI in their law school, which is mostly documents and pleadings. And they found that the students with GPT, randomized controlled trial to perform faster than those without. But the quality improvement was noticed really for the lower skilled students. So again, we hear stories about teachers reprimanding students for suddenly writing perfectly because of AI. But then on the other hand, isn't that what we're supposed to do? And if we can find tools that can help us with that, especially in a corporate setting, then that should be a welcome development. Okay, so when Microsoft ran its early survey on AI, uh, easily half of them, employees, were worried about jobs. 70% would delegate work to AI if it will reduce their workload. So there's a dual thing. I'm worried for my job, but I want work-life balance so I can give it to AI. So those who are more excited about AI are those suffering with burnout or, trying to make, you know, try burnout, trying to make the most out of the time you have in the office, which is often very limited. No? Okay, what about finance and accounting? Well, you think about it, the more automation we do, the more accountants can focus more time on strategy, planning, risk management. These are for me, the more important tasks. But because we're stuck doing the mechanical accounting work, many of us don't participate in this. Second, labor. There's going to be a labor shortage. There is an actual labor shortage for accountants now. BPOs have started hiring them for financial BPO work. And the talent gap will only get worse unless A, we improve education, and B, we make everyone more productive so that the headcount requirement isn't that much, or you end up multiplying the total productivity of the company as a result. No? Finally, it's about competition. I mean, let's face it. Competitors are going to use AI, they're going to implement it, they're going to start pitching to customers, including yours. And you understand that, okay, I'm going to give the AI guys a shot. It's just a basic, you know, experimentation. So more importantly, if you upskill and your company trains, then that's a really good proposition to retain employees. Okay, so I want to recap. Um, Gen AI is really disrupting accounting, and the sooner we jump on this, first mover advantage is still available, the better. Prompt engineering is the quintessential skill. You have to learn that. Agentic AI workflows are the future of finance, where you basically break a process into several parts and then you use AI to fill in the blanks. And then finally, the accounting profession itself will change because of AI. There's no denying it. And the sooner we face reality, the better. So this is Professor Melanie Mitchell. She said, sensationalist claims about AI deflect attention from real risks and might result in blocking the potential benefits that we could reap from this progress. So I think that's important rather than, you know, looking at the downside of AI lang. Okay, I mentioned that I do capacity building for AI and cyber. So if you're interested in taking a short course on prompt engineering and prompting or learn design thinking using AI, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me at docligot.com. And I guess I want to end with this. No, this has really been my advocacy since I started in 2022 for Gen AI. I've been using AI much longer than that, but I think Gen AI is the great equalizer, as they say. My goal is to produce 1 million AI practitioners. I'm still in the thousands right now, low thousands, and I would appreciate if you're interested in this, please reach out. You know, if you want to get trained, or you want your company to get trained, or if you know already how to do this, you want to collaborate and be a trainer, please reach out to me at docligot.com. So with that, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me today. And I want to wish all the accounting technicians out there all the best. And yeah, hopefully to see you, someday with stories about how you've used AI for good. Okay, so thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.